1/3 of the sun, 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars was struck. So that 1/3 of them turned dark. 1/3 of the day was kept from shining. And also the night. I believe this judgment may be declaring a shift in the axis of the Earth. This would cause 1/3 of the day to be lost. As the Earth starts to revolve around a new axis, which would alter the orbit of the sun, moon, stars and planets. And the sun would rise and set in a different place. And the moon would also appear to have altered its orbit. A shift in the axis of the Earth could indeed cause 1/3 of the day and night to be lost. And instead of a 24-hour day, we would experience a 16-hour day. If the Earth loses 8 hours, then sunset would occur at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Which means, all the clocks in the world would have to be reset. God has done things like this before. In 2 Kings 20 verse 8, God made the sun go backwards, and then forward again. Which would mean that the Earth's rotation would have rolled back, and then forward again. And during the days of Joshua in Joshua 10 verse 12, God made the sun and moon stand still for a while.
Really going on in the cosmos and interstellar space. What people call aliens, we call IBs, or in layman's terms, interdimensional beings. And what we found out and have known about since the early 70s is that, in simplest terms, other dimensions or planes, as we call them, exist and lay on top of each other, almost stacked, as if you had a blanket with another blanket stacked on top of it and another blanket stacked on top of it. To explain it so you can understand, you can imagine the Earth and our reality as a thin blanket, and all of these other higher dimensions are the blankets laying directly on top of ours. However, we can only see our own blanket. Now the alien beings, or the ships that we have seen in videos, and that many people have captured over the years, are in fact what we call jumpers, in that they exist in their relative dimensions, but have in fact jumped into ours. We have discovered that most of the time we are unable to see them, as they are at a wavelength indifferent to our own, and our senses, eyes and ears cannot detect. From the information that I have gathered and been briefed on, every planet, star, and galaxy within our own plane and universe, as we see it, exists also in these other dimensions. We've detected that we know of and that I've been briefed on at least 4 other dimensions that do exist. Now, as I said, every planet we know of, every galaxy does exist in these other dimensions. However, with each new dimension, each planet, galaxy, star takes on a different form. To explain it in the most simplest terms, you can look at our own planet, Jupiter, which is in the outer reaches of our solar system. Now, to us, it's a deadly gaseous planet, completely uninhabitable. However, when you look at Jupiter in an elevated dimension, you will see that it has completely changed in all forms. You will see that it's no longer a deadly ball of gas, but is now solid, has a different color, and is now inhabited. We know for a fact this is true due to the fact that the government has the technology to detect these higher dimensions and actually get a small view of what the solar system looks like on the other side, as we call it, in these other dimensions. There is much we do not know about the universe and how it works. However, here are the facts that I can confirm as truth and were made known to me, and that I and the other people that I worked with have been briefed on. Now, we are not alone in the universe. There are alien beings within our own dimension of space, as well as other dimensions. The planet Earth is an early stage, I guess you could say, training ground, if you will, whereby which we as beings will live until we advance to the higher dimensions. Now, we are not the bottom of the food chain, and we have discovered that there are at least 2 dimensions below our own plane. But that is as far as I will go regarding that. Now, I'm getting a little bit low on time, so I will leave you with a few other important things that people will no doubt want to know about later in time once this video is made public. Now, these are things that I have been briefed on by my superiors and that are common knowledge in the Black Ops community. Now, the planet that we know of as Mars was at one time inhabited, but again, at one time was wiped out by the people who inhabited the planet, which were much more technologically advanced than we are, which we discovered by testing and analyzing the chemical residue found from the blasts around the planet, as well as artifacts that we've also discovered on the planet, including the infamous glass tubes seen in the few of the publicly made photographs from NASA. Now, these are not glass structures, but a glass-like material that is about 1,000 times stronger than any material or steel that we have on our own planet. These tubes were used as a means of travel underground and above ground by the people who inhabited this planet. It is thought from our research that there are still an ET presence inhabiting Mars, but again, this is as far as I will go, and that I was briefed on regarding that matter. Now, I'm not trying to be completely vague, but I am trying to give you a picture of what is going on out there that doesn't completely put me in more danger than I am already in just by revealing the few things that I have. One of the last things that I will reveal, and that is definitely a fact, and that I have been briefed on, and that many other people involved with the Black Ops community have been briefed on, and that is our own moon, which does in fact have alien bases on it, and also has bases from our own government. Now, there is an ET presence, which is primarily located on the dark side of the moon. The Apollo program was in all actuality a reconnaissance mission, so that we could research what was exactly there and who. You will notice that many of the photos from the Apollo missions have airbrushed out buildings and bases, and this is the truth of the matter. About half of the video that you will see that is documented from the Apollo missions was in fact shot here on Earth at Area 51. In fact, if you look at satellite imagery, you can actually see what's left of a crater field created at Area 51 that was used in the filming. Now, the truth is that most of the footage from the moon was simply cluttered with bases, with alien buildings, and from what one astronaut said, and I'm quoting, what were a constant presence of alien vehicles flying over the surface, cluttering up the footage. So again, they showed the American people what they could, and recreated the rest here on Earth that they couldn't show. From what we know, the dark side of the moon is where most of the alien presence is located. It's a more primitive alien race from what we can see, and our research tells us. It's more primitive than the alien beings you would see on higher dimensions, but still thousands, if not millions of years ahead of us. Now, we have our own bases, which are primarily located in or near the Sea of Tranquility, which is the site of Apollo 11, and also one base that I know of located near the crater Sabine D. To this day, we are still sending secret missions to and from the moon. However, I do not know the complete details of what we are doing.
war is being waged that you may know nothing about, the war against the homeless. On April 18th, the ACLU sent a letter to both the Department of Justice and the Detroit Police Department urging that the practice of dumping the homeless be stopped. A year-long ACLU investigation claims the following. Detroit police officers stopped people perceived to be homeless in the tourist area of Greektown in Detroit. They forced them into vans, took them for a ride, and deserted them miles away. The sad truth, Detroit isn't the only city that treats the homeless this way. Joining me now from Detroit is Michael Steinberg, Legal Director of the ACLU of Michigan. Nice to have you, Michael.
Thank you, Melissa.
So tell me, what did your investigation show that the police were doing to folks who are experiencing homelessness in Detroit?
Essentially, what the police were doing were kidnapping individuals off the streets of tourist-friendly areas of Detroit, storm drain. And the problem, of course, is that the lifeline for many of these individuals is in Greektown. There are warming centers, there's food and churches and other services. So they'd have to walk sometimes through the middle of Michigan winter. One person had a blood clot in his leg, and it took him over 3 hours to get back.
Michael, I want to take a moment and listen to some of the men talking about their own experiences, and then I'll have you respond to something.
Okay. Did ask who we were. You know, get in the van.
I asked him if I was free to go. He told me no.
We took like maybe a 15-minute ride.
You don't know where you're going. You don't know where you're ending up. Maybe when you get there, you're abused in some way. What would that feel like?
And we're walking back. It took us almost 5 hours to get back. Walking, it was cold.
So, Michael, have the Detroit Police Department or the Department of Justice addressed these concerns?
Well, we had the quickest response time in Detroit by the police in history, I think. As soon as we sent our letter, they sent over 2 members of Internal Affairs saying they wanted to investigate it. They've met with some of the individuals that we've spoken to, and we hope it will put an end to it. We've also reported it to the Department of Justice because we believe that the practice violates the consent judgment that was entered into between the DOJ and the Detroit Police Department.
So, Michael, part of what we've been talking about this morning is criminalizing drugs, but there's also this kind of impact of criminalizing homelessness. And we were looking at not only in Detroit, but sort of all over the country, municipalities doing things like making it illegal to sleep or sit in a store or in personal buildings, laws punishing people for begging or panhandling, enforcement of these so-called quality of life ordinances. Tell me, is there a war on the homeless?
You can definitely appropriately characterize it as a war on the homeless. We are challenging a state law in Michigan that makes it a crime to beg in public. We have represented individuals who have been charged with trespass for sleeping on public land. They're essentially criminalizing the status of being homeless. Society, if we want to stop seeing homeless people on the streets, we as a society have to treat the problem as a social problem, not a criminal justice problem. We have to provide mental health services to those who need it. We have to provide drug treatment programs for those who need it in public housing. We can't make it a crime to be homeless. Homelessness is not going to go away by making it illegal.
Michael Steinberg in Detroit, I so appreciate that point, and it dovetails so nicely with what we're talking about in terms of drugs. We have a set of social responsibilities, epidemiological problems here. It is not solved through criminalizing. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Since the 2012 rejection of mass ascension, humans have embraced the fear vibration. This created the threefold return, or 3 scenarios that are a direct result from people's unconscious choices. One or all of these scenarios will occur. Humanity still can change the outcome, but it is very unlikely now.
Well, the question was, if Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. And I want them to understand that, because it does mean that they have to look very carefully at their society. Because whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
Scenario 1, World War III. Hillary Clinton is quite possibly the most corrupt and evil person to ever run for President of the United States. Previous title holders were Lyndon B. Johnson, the man that quarterbacked the JFK assassination, and Dick Cheney, the man that quarterbacked 9/11. But these guys look like Boy Scouts compared to what Hillary has in mind. Anyway, if Hillary gets elected, then she will start World War III, no question about it. The system of bankers and global interests she works for want World War III. War is a banker's dream. They make a lot of money no matter who wins. These people are hardcore psychopaths. They have no empathy for any other human except their own family, and even then, some of them get killed if they don't play ball. Read my second book for the whole story, and it will shock you. They want a war with Russia and China, and for the last 12 months, they have been doing everything they can to provoke those countries. They need Russia or China to shoot first. That way, they can justify a world war, and the sheeple will support it. But if those countries won't come to the party, they have armed and trained North Korea with a nuclear weapon as Plan B. If Russia or China don't fire first, they will get North Korea to do it in a false flag nuclear attack, or maybe a dirty bomb attack, on a major US city. They hope that the loss of hundreds of thousands of American lives will spur that nation and its allies into full-blown world war. Again, as I point out in my second book, they want to fulfill the playbook of their guru, Albert Pike, who was a 33-degree Freemason, a Satanist, and founding member of the Ku Klux Klan. Pike spoke how they will create 3 world wars. The first and second were exactly as he said that they would be, so there is no reason to doubt that the third will follow his game plan. After 10 years or so of this total world war, the people will grow weary. So when that time comes, the New World Order people will hold secret meetings with their enemy, China. They will promise China a backdoor deal to end the war. But to do so, China must stab their ally Russia in the back. In exchange, there will be an armistice. China will be given complete control of the Asia-Pacific, including Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. Russia will be obliterated, fulfilling Nathan Rothschild's wish. The New World Order will control the rest of the world. All countries will live under a communist regime most resembling neo-feudalism. That is, a world of the very wealthy and the very poor, no middle class. The only reason why this has not already happened is because of one man, Vladimir Putin. Regardless of what you think you know about Putin, he is humanity's only hope of avoiding World War III and defeating the Illuminati New World Order. That is why the mainstream media are demonizing him. Trust me, when the media turn on someone, it is usually to turn public opinion against them, because that person represents a threat to the establishment. Now, here is the big curveball. Mr. Obama does not want to give up his cushy life in the White House. So he may use the false flag or the upcoming earth changes to suspend the elections indefinitely. So chances are there will not even be an election in 2016, and Obama will be America's last president, and that is not set in stone just yet. But for the record, Obama is a card-carrying, die-in-the-wall communist. He honestly believes he would make a great, benevolent dictator. Read the book Animal Farm to see how that works out. Scenario 2. Islamic Caliphate. On the 13th of May 1981, there was an assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square at Vatican City. The Pope was shot and wounded by a Turkish hitman, Mehmet Ali Akkar. The Pope was struck 4 times and suffered severe blood loss. Akkar was apprehended immediately and later sentenced to life in prison by an Italian court. The Pope later forgave him for the assassination attempt. He was pardoned then by President Carlo Ciampi at the Pope's request and was deported to Turkey in June 2000. Akkar published his autobiography in Italy in 2013. His book is called I Was Promised Paradise. He claims that he worked for an Islamic black magic cult. The Grey Wolves invoke jinns, otherwise known as demons. That group has since morphed into ISIS. They have a prophecy that their Messiah, the Mahdi, will bring about the destruction of the West and Christianity. In fact, Akkar says in his book, basically, it's really as if the world finishes in favour of a new era. Go into any mosque around the world, listen to what they say about the return of the Mahdi. They all say the same thing. Soon, very soon indeed, he is arriving. What does this mean? That a part of Islam is sharpening their weapons. The return of the Mahdi will bring bloodshed. If the Mahdi will not manifest himself, they're to unleash hell onto the Western world. That is why they have been slowly positioning their people into every Western country on the planet. The refugee crisis in Europe is the last stage of positioning the chess pieces. It is their specific intention to destroy the Vatican in Rome. Pope John Paul II strongly believed that this was the third prophecy of Fatima. The prophecy of Fatima was given to the world on May 13, 1917. The first 2 prophecies were released almost immediately. However, the third prophecy was supposed to be released to the world in the 1960s, but for some reason it was kept sealed. On May 13, 1981, on the anniversary of the original prophecy of Fatima, Pope John Paul II was en route to St. Peter's Square to deliver the third and final prophecy. He was adamant that the people deserved to know what it contained. Before he could reveal the prophecy, however, he was shot down by Mehmet Ali Akkar. The Grey Wolves, now ISIS, did not want their plans revealed to the world. The third prophecy of Fatima contains their plans to destroy the Vatican and the Western world, and they want to do it on a special date of May 13, 2017. Many of the Vatican cardinals have secretly converted to Islam in hope to save their skins when the time of destruction comes. They want to be part of the New World Order One religion. A new Vatican II is under construction. It is called the Temple of the Work of the Holy Spirit, and it is located in Palestrina, just outside Rome, of the serpent, which I talk about in Book 1, connected to the priest class that became the Illuminati. This new temple is supposed to be for the one world religion and will begin after the destruction of the Vatican. Notice how the inside looks like a mosque where followers kneel on their mats to worship. Construction is expected to be completed in 2019. Scenario 3. The return of Nibiru. I cover everything you need to know about Nibiru and its inhabitants in my first book, The Truth Chronicles, Book 1, Secrets of the Soul. However, here is a quick background. There is a planet that the ancients called Nibiru. NASA calls it Planet X. It's about 4.5 to 5 times the size of Earth. It belongs to a small solar system whose star is a dwarf star known as Nemesis. All up, the Nemesis system has 7 planets, and Nibiru is its largest and is the only one that's inhabited by beings called the Anunnaki. It has a dusty red atmosphere that creates wings on each side, so the ancients always depicted Nibiru as a winged disk. Nibiru passes the Earth around every 3,500 years or so. Sometimes it comes close, and sometimes it comes really close. The last time it came really close, it stripped the atmosphere of Mars, sending all of the Martian oceans into space. The Anunnaki that were based there had to evacuate and come to Earth. On Earth, it caused the Antarctic ice sheet in the south to break off, causing a global tsunami that the Bible refers to as the Flood of Noah. This flood and ensuing cataclysm was documented by dozens of native peoples all over the world. The Anunnaki monitored this whole episode from a satellite they put into orbit. This satellite is still in orbit and is now known as the Black Knight satellite. As Nibiru approaches Earth, the gravitational forces begin to make their presence known. The much stronger gravity of Nibiru begins to heat up the Earth's core. Between the Earth's core and the outer layer, known as the crust, is an area called the mantle. The mantle is the most solid bulk of Earth's interior. It lies between Earth's dense superheated core and its thin outer layer, the crust. The mantle is about 2,000 and more volcanoes begin to become active. Earthquakes start to happen everywhere. Coral in the oceans becomes bleached, and the weather patterns become severe and unpredictable. All of these events are referred to as Earth changes. In April 2016, the Earth changes became undeniable. A video put out by SOTT, or Sign of the Times, details each day of April and what Earth changes happened on each day. When you see this, you will be left in no doubt that the countdown has begun.
Overnight, blizzard-like conditions in Massachusetts. Nearly 1,900 crew working through the night, clearing roads. Treacherous conditions leading to wreck after wreck. In upstate New York, a bus carrying 36 college students flipping over and winding up upside down. Incredibly, there were no serious injuries. And in Connecticut, a tractor trailer sliding and jackknifing on this bridge. New Jersey police releasing this dramatic dash cam video. Trees snapping from heavy winds.
In northern Pakistan, flash floods triggered by heavy rain have killed at least 55 people. An emergency operation has been launched to help thousands of survivors, dozens of whom have been cut off by a landslide in a mountain valley. Some 150 homes are said to have been destroyed.
These earth changes are what I was told about 20 years ago, and they are happening right now. In April 2016, there were daily events for the whole month. These included volcanoes erupting, and even some that have not been active for over 70 years. Earthquakes shook many countries, wild weather was everywhere. It even snowed in Saudi Arabia. And of course, scientists revealed that 90% of the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia is now bleached. Exactly as I spoke about 20 years ago. Back then, I correctly predicted that the signs would become more obvious after 2012, leading up to 2020. But I must admit now that it appears I got that timing slightly wrong. I now have good evidence that it will come much earlier than 2020. Earthquakes, volcanoes and wild weather will only get worse as Nibiru approaches. However, the real showstopper comes next. Meteorites. Nibiru passes through the Kuiper Belt, which is made up of billions of asteroids and chunks of ice. Some of these objects are as large as Pluto, while others are only the size of a pea. It will also pass through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. As Nibiru passes through the Kuiper Belt and the asteroid belt, it drags millions of rocks and debris with it, trailing millions of kilometres behind it. As it approaches the Earth, many of the asteroids will be pulled toward the Earth due to gravity. So as a final sign of Nibiru's approach, we will witness mass meteorite showers. However, some of these meteors can weigh as much as 30 kilograms or 65 pounds of solid iron. So when they fall from space and hit the ground, they will explode. It would be like being in the middle of a World War I artillery barrage. There could be as much as 1 month of these meteor showers, but they will vary in intensity and in size and duration. Some days will be worse than others. A CIA insider has come forward and revealed that they have been tracking the Nemesis system since the They now know it will swing by very, very close to Earth this time, within about 50 million kilometres. Now, that's like a stone's throw in astrological terms. This is going to cause a pole shift. We can expect the slip will be from the South Pole to the North Pole. So all the landmass of Earth will move at about 1,400 kilometres per second, or 0.86 miles per second, south to north, then abruptly stop. The sudden stop will cause all of the oceans to slosh up, then go back in the opposite direction they came from. That will create a global tsunami of about 700 metres to 3,000 metres high, or 2,296 feet to 9,850 feet high, travelling at 700 metres or half a mile a second. The water will slosh back and forth for several days. In fact, as Nibiru passes, it will stop the Earth's rotation. So one side of the Earth will be in complete darkness for 3 days, and the other side will be in complete sunlight for 3 days. As Nibiru passes, the Earth will begin to rotate again as per normal. Basically, the Earth is going through a very rare process that will see most of the inhabitants of the planet die as a result of massive Earth changes. It is not the first time this has happened, and it will not be the last. The ancients knew that, and they tried to warn us. That is why they built their monuments in massive stone blocks. The reason why so many will die is because they do not want to know. They do not want to listen. They do not want to be part of one of the most exciting times in this planet's history, the ascension. Humans were given a choice, and they chose fear. We all live in a kleptocracy now. It is a term applied to a government that is in bed with the ruling class, in this case corporations, taking advantage of corruption to extend their personal wealth and political power. Corporate lawyers now write all of our legislation. They write the laws to benefit the corporations, protect them from prosecution, and maximise the ability to make a profit, even at the expense of the people and the environment. This is the world we live in, and most people are happy to turn a blind eye. That is how they got into control in the first place. The world is now so far gone down the corruption path, the self-entitlement mentality path, the selfishness path, the apathy path, and the willful ignorance path that there is no way to bring it back. But not everyone on earth will die. Indeed, for those that do want to know, that do want to listen, that do want to participate, then welcome aboard and keep watching. What the Palladians were telling me that night was, like myself, many others were being asked to not only preserve life, but to build a new way of life and to get the message out to as many people as possible. By following their instructions, I could be assured that the second vision, that of happy people in the hills, would be a reality, your reality, and that of anyone else that